In today's episode of the Film Monday, to be covering two major documentaries, which is from Ghana and making waves out there in the international scene. The first being The Eyes of Ghana, of which those who have been watching this channel definitely have heard me talk about it. And this Eyes of Ghana had the opportunity to go watch the entire film in the cinema, and it was quite exciting to watch. And for those who may not know, The Eyes of Ghana is about the iconic and legendary cinematographer that is Reverend Chris Hesse of the late founder of Ghana, Kwame Nkrumah, and he had the unique opportunity to witness the pre-colonial era right into the reign of Dr. Kwame Nkrumah, and through his act of shooting the film of all the events that unfolded. So it was quite an exciting documentary, I must admit. And also, secondly, the documentary film about one of Ghana's iconic musician that has ever passed through this life, that is Kiki Gyan, has been selected for the Locarno Open Doors, and none other than Aseye Fiagbe is the one director or directed it and produced it, and the title is Too Much Music. So it is quite exciting to hear that another documentary capturing, or the life of one of Ghana's illustrious son is being made. So we'll be delving into all these stories, and I think it is something that we need to talk about. So before we delve into it, I first and foremost want to take the opportunity to thank all of you who have been waiting to see me return to this channel and talk about the things we all love, that is film, both from the African front and international scene. And my absence definitely has a reason to it, although I must state up, apologize that if you've been missing my presence for a while, because um, I had the opportunity to work on an international production for about 3 months, and I couldn't return um, early as I thought I would. And due to some personal challenges, I couldn't come back to host this channel as I wanted to. But now I'm back, and thank you for returning to watch what we like to talk about best, and we'll be delving and moving forward with it. So thank you for staying tuned, and welcome to the Film Mandate. My name is Papa Otu. So in the very first story, one of the exciting things you can ever think of is having the opportunity to witness how um, history, sorry, how history unfolds, and that is through the eyes of one film, through the eyes of one cinematographer. And this cinematographer is none other than Reverend Chris Hesse, who through his entire lifetime has witnessed iconic or historical moments unfold from the pre-colonial era right through the entire reign of Kwame Nkrumah. And if my mind serves me right, he had opportunity to also, capture events of successive leaders in the country before finally retiring entirely from the art of cinematography. But he still, teaches and nurses the young one to take after him. And this image that you see is of him finally recognizing that, I mean, realizing a part of his vision of all the footage that he created or captured on these reels being finally stored and safe in a vault in the UK. And that excitement, indeed, I cannot describe it best until you've watched the film, because I can tell you for a fact this film, that is The Eyes of Ghana, is such a powerful film that I think every individual who likes film, who likes history, should do their best to watch it, because Ben Proudfoot, who is a two-time Academy Award winner for certain documentary shorts that he has made, directed this one and produced it as well. And listen, it really speaks of how the caliber of a director he is, in terms of how he's able to craft a story and tell it to make it very, very interesting. Most often when we talk about documentaries, most people are likely to think that it may not be exciting and entertaining enough, but this documentary, The Eyes of Ghana, is one of the most entertaining um, piece of documentary you can ever watch. I had opportunity to watch it, so I'm only speaking from my perspective as an audience in the cinema a couple of weeks ago, and they even showed it to us for free. That's the exciting thing, and that's what they've been doing. I think they are still showing it all over the world. So if it comes to a cinema near you and you get to know about it, do yourself a favor and go and watch it, particularly if you're a student of history and also a student of cinema. And I can tell you for a fact, the shots or cinematography of this very piece, together with the score, the score is so beautifully made. And in watching this, you go through moments of laughter, at the same time balanced. I mean, that moment of laughter was well positioned to help you deal or break the intense moments of sadness. And uh, uh, there are moments that you are literally brought to tears. I mean, I'm not talking about, you're brought to tears. And this particular image is that of you know Edmond Ado, who was a projectionist for one of Ghana's iconic cinemas way back in the, I think, in the colonial era. And he kept his dream alive, of keeping the Rex cinema, going. And unfortunately, at the time of screening this particular documentary in the cinema, unfortunately, he has passed on to glory. So he couldn't even witness this documentary come to life. But one of the iconic storylines in these documentaries, that of Edmond Ado, who um, told his story of how he lost his family and children because he couldn't give up on his dream of letting the cinema collapse entirely. So, I mean, I know there will be there are several angles as to what people will say about his story. Unfortunately, I wish that wasn't the case for him, but there's someone who showed passion for cinema, even at the detriment of his own family life, which um, I wouldn't wish on anybody to go through that. But it speaks of the passion and love he had for the cinema, even from his very young age till the time of his passing. All he could think of doing is to be a projectionist, and he lived it entirely. So that's one of the storylines that is very, very powerful. And the fact that Reverend Chris Hesse is still, held on to the dream of making sure that everything that he shot on celluloid about the colonial era through to the entire reign of Kwame Nkrumah and beyond, his vision was to ensure that all these celluloid are not destroyed by successive governments who wanted to entirely do away with anything that had to do with the former Prime Minister, Dr. Kwame Nkrumah, and so many other issues that I may not even understand entirely. But what matters the most is the fact that he stressed on the or the fact that documentary or storytelling is so important, whether truth or lies. It needs to be told as it is, not to necessarily paint someone in a glorified way or demonize someone, but the story as it is ought to be told. And listen, I don't know whether I'll be able to show this, but I I mean I captured a little footage. I don't know whether the sound will be good enough, but whilst there, I indeed captured something little that I think I would love to share for us to watch. The sound might not be too good because I must admit I couldn't get it to display the best way I can. But there's a footage of Reverend Chris Hesse talking about all that he has captured. And, let me just play it and then you get to know him. Let me, yeah, so. So, stand by. We are going to see all these things, the history. And that history will make Ghana free. What we are going to see is the truth. Please don't tell lies. It's the truth. It's the truth. Shall make us free. Yeah, so that is Reverend Chris Hesse for you. That was after the screening. This was held at the University of Ghana CD Hall, lecture hall or so, if I'm not mistaken. And one of the, I mean, what he's saying about is concerning the footage that he has taken. This was during the Q&A session, and he spoke about how everything that he has captured is the truth, and the truth is as plainly as it is, whether it's in terms of documenting all that happened, his objective was not to either glorify or demonize any of the characters or people in the documentary, particularly with regards to Dr. Kwame Nkrumah, but present the truth as it is for future generations to decide on whether they think what they think of the late founder of the country. So that was quite an interesting perspective, and from an expert, you know, documentarian to get as a and cinematographer, he's not lying. Capturing the truth as it is and presenting it to audiences who can decide and you know on their own as to what they think of who the person indeed is. So that is quite exciting, I must say, and it was indeed. I cannot describe the feeling enough unless you are there yourself to watch it. But I can tell you that this team did an amazing job. They did an amazing job of telling this story, and there are several hours and hours and length of reels that were not captured in the documentary. So from what we heard, it was just about 10-15 minutes of the footage that Reverend Chris Hesse shot that was actually used in this documentary. So there are still quite a lot that have not been shown yet, and that is something that perhaps in future time to come, we'll get the opportunity to see exactly what has been captured on the celluloid. So listen, do your best. I mean, I think there will be no end for me to, if I wanted to explain what I went through, the feelings I had, the emotions, the thoughts, I'll never end. And already I've spent too much time on this particular um, topic. But I think you should do yourself a favor to indeed watch this documentary if you get opportunity to. It is quite an amazing documentary. It has its moments of levity as well as its moments of deep emotions. And listen, I was teary eyed at certain points because as a Ghanaian and witnessing a, a, a part of this history from an angle that I've never seen before. Indeed, it did move me. And thanks to this team, Proudfoot, together with Nanajua, Anita Alfonu, and I'm missing one name, they did quite an amazing job. And I must say that I've never been this entertained by a documentary and also emotionally touched so much by a documentary than like this film. And indeed, it's quite an amazing piece of documentary or artwork. Let me put it that way. So let me know what you think. If you've watched The Eyes of Ghana, why don't you drop your comments in the comment section, your thoughts on the comment section below, so that those who haven't had opportunity to watch it or may think that maybe because I'm a Ghanaian, I'm pushing the narrative that this is the very best I've seen, they may actually hear from you as well and then, decide for themselves. Whatever your thoughts concerning this film, kindly drop it in the comment section below. So we'll move on to the next topic, and this has to do with such an amazing, this is also another documentary, and it is indeed titled Too Much Music. Too Much Music. And the Too Much Music, the reason for the title is actually words uttered by the person about whom this documentary is being made. And this documentary, Too Much Music, is directed and produced by Aseye Fiagbe. Aseye Fiagbe. And this has been selected for the Locarno open doors happening at that Locarno Film Festival, project which is being done. And Aseye Fiagbe, a Ghanaian who is passionate about documentary, indeed, is the one pioneering this or who made this happen. So that is quite exciting to hear that another documentary is making waves already on the international stage, and is by none other than this amazing filmmaker. And by I checked her out, and she is into advertisement, and her specialty is into you know um, videography of food. She does a lot of stuff, from documentaries. And she's also did another documentary, the Moon Over a Brie, if I'm not mistaken, Moon Over a Brie. So this will be her second official documentary that she is embarking on. And to even hear about making a documentary concerning one of Ghana's iconic musical legend, Kiki Gyan, is something that excited me because I've always been fascinated about the story of Kiki Gyan concerning the rise and fall of this musician who could have completely transformed the landscape had he not fallen into such troubles and phased out of the music scenes for decades. So, for those who may not know about Kiki Gyan is one of he was for a brief moment was part of uh, the Afro UK based group called Osibisa, who brought us such powerful songs like Warrior Warrior and Oja Oe Oja. I mean, for those who may not know, if you heard a song, you get to know what I mean. But this group was such a powerful force to reckon with back in the 70s, right down to the 90s and even beyond. And their music is still being listened to today. For a brief summary of his story, his life story, Kiki Gyan became so, he is, uh, for lack of a better word, he was a genius. At the age of 5, he started learning to play piano, and at the age of 12, he was already uh, a legend in the art of playing piano. And he was discovered by Mactonto, not necessarily discovered by Mactonto. He used to be part of a group already who went to play songs in the UK, and that was when Matonto got to meet him and recruited him into the Osibisa group. However, I never stayed that long with the group because he wanted to do so many things, and he went out on his own and released three solo albums, or yeah, solo albums or singles, and it became a massive hit. He was even compared to be the next or Stevie Wonder, who can rival him in terms of music. And for that brief moment, his star shined so bright that nobody could deny the power of music, or the kind of music he was doing, and how powerful they are with regards to his instrumentation and the singing as well. So Kiki Gyan indeed became quite a phenom of the time, and before he turned 18, this legend or this musician was a millionaire already. However, he fell into drugs, and that's something that he said that's the worst day in his life, because from that moment on, he went downhill and never ever recovered. There's someone who's had the opportunity to, meet or even fraternize, or I don't know, with Elton John, Stevie Wonder. I mean, all the big names you can ever think of. He had opportunity to be with them at the time, and his name was known because of how good and excellent of a pianist he was. Unfortunately, even with all the help that they sought to give him to get him out of the challenges of drug abuse, he still couldn't overcome his demons, and unfortunately died in 2004, um, on a church toilet. And that's quite a sad ending to such a magnificent talent as he is, or as he was. And that's quite sad. And it's unfortunate that such a talent couldn't overcome all these challenges he was going through, and perished the way he did. So with honesty, I think this particular story being produced by and directed by Aseye Fiagbe is something worth telling. It's a story worth telling. And finally, I'm so glad and excited that someone, a Ghanaian, has taken this bold initiative to get this story told, so that we get to know more about what went on in his life, and perhaps become a cautionary tale for those who are in that space of music, or even not necessarily music alone, but in whatever celebrity status anyone can find themselves in. This can be a cautionary tale to every single one of us. And to the very left is when he was young, and then the very right, I think a few years or months prior to his death. You know, this how you know this how worse his body deteriorated. And not just that, but there was more than just the drug abuse. It was also there was the challenge of also him having contracted AIDS. So with the contracting of AIDS, it led to him, getting worse, and unfortunately he couldn't recover in even in his drug abuse. So there was an article published about over 20 years ago by one of Ghana's big names in the in journalism, and that is Kweku Sechi Ado, which was published on the BBC. So Kweku Sechi Ado was one of Ghana's finest journalists, and or TV personality, or statesman rather. And he wrote about him, which stated the title of it was "Riches to Rags: Ghana Mourns Music Hero." So let me just read some briefly, and then I'll go to the very part that I wanted to stress on. So it says that Ghana's music fraternity in a state of mourning after the death of one of the country's biggest stars. And this was published on Thursday, June 10th, 2004. It says that keyboard player Kiki Gyan, 47, was founded in a toilet inside a church with equivalent of 70 cents US cents in his pocket. For a man who made more than $1 million before the age of 18, had hung out with Elton John, Mick Jagger, played for Britain's Queen, and cruised on champagne drenched luxury ocean liners to island hop in the Caribbean. It was a particularly ignominious way to cross life's finish line. Kiki died of AIDS and drugs related complications. Right now, I'm sad, very sad, said Matonto, trumpeter and joint leader of Osibisa, the erstwhile London-based Afro-rock group with whom Kiki first found fame in the early 1970s. I'm sad not because Kiki's dead. He was suffering too much. I saw him every day. I'm sad because he should have died with dignity. Too much music. And this, the very title Aseye Fiagbe is using for the documentary, and I'm glad. It looks like she's really done her research so well that she felt that this line is so iconic for the documentary as a title for the documentary. So this is what um let's get delve into. So Tonto now in the 60s. So I mean Tonto as well, Matonto as well is no more. But at the time in 2004, in the 60s, is the man who spotted Kiki's keyboard's talent in 1971 and signed him on with Osibisa. And it was he who, together with Kiki's sister, Goji, found his body and signed him into the mortuary. Kiki came from a middle class family in Takoradi in the western region of Ghana and dropped out of secondary school at 14. And this is what Kiki himself said. I feel like this line is so iconic. It's of I don't know whether there is a archival footage or stock footage of him saying this on camera. That would have been quite marvelous to have. But this is what he said, that there was too much music in me. I couldn't stay in school, he said. He'd been playing the piano at home since he was 3. So I was even mistaken. I said 5, but 3. He joined Osibisa shortly after a tour of London with the local Ghanaian band Pagadija. I remember our first gig with Kiki. This was in Cardiff. The boy was just fantastic, fantastic, recalls Tonto. After the show, all the girls, let me just leave it here. But yeah, so let me just read this one. Maybe it's part of, for you to have an insight as to why perhaps he ended up having AIDS. So he said that I remember our first gig with Kiki. This was in Cardiff. The boy was just fantastic, fantastic, recalls Tonto. After the show, all the girls charged at him. They were tearing him apart. They all wanted a piece of him. Kiki was running. We had to call the bouncers to protect him, Tonto said. Yeah, so I mean, I'll leave the link to this article, which was published over 20 years ago, for you to, you know, read further if you think, I mean, if you want to read more, know more about him. But Kiki Jan's story is, like any other biopic that we have watched or stories we heard of such musical legends, mostly some of them have been through this kind of life where there is the rise and then the fall of them. And unfortunately, Kiki Jan also ended up kind of uh, uh, demise or tragedy. And I wish it was different. I wish it was rather, I mean, rags to riches and staying there, or riches and staying there. Unfortunately, it didn't end up the way we expected. But I with this documentary that is going to be made or is being made by I see Fiagbe. Indeed, I'm very excited about it, and I'm truly looking forward to seeing what will finally end up on the you know on the screens for us all to watch. And kudos to Aseye and all the team that are from Africa that have been selected. I think there are six of them who have been selected to participate in this particular event, and indeed it's quite exciting. So congratulations, Aseye Fiagbe. We wish you all the best, and we hope you get all the support both from where you are now on the international stage and also locally from home to make sure that this story is well told. And indeed, thanks for taking up this initiative so that we get to know more about this legend that perhaps have been forgotten by so many. But one of the things that nobody can rule out is the fact that most people who may not even know his music still know of the name Kiki Gyan because he was so bigger that even time couldn't erase him from history. So we'll be looking forward to seeing what um, Aseye Fiagbe would finally put out, and then we'll all watch it as well, just as we have enjoyed the Eyes of Ghana. We hope to still bear witness of the life, albeit tragic, of Kiki Gyan. So yeah, let me know what you think about the story of Kiki Gyan. If you've ever listened to his music, if you've ever heard about him, kindly drop your thoughts on what you learned about his life in the comment section below, and it will be much appreciated. So wrapping up, today being a weekend as usual, just as I do it, I've been doing it in time past, we'll be delving into the box office receipts of films that performed on the world stage, particularly in cinemas over the weekend. And starting with the domestic weekend, when I say domestic, it has to do with the box office of the North American markets, which uh, encompasses both America and Canada, concerning the big films that we so love to watch. And that's why I always do that. But so quickly, let's take a quick look as to which films performed well on the big theatrical stage. Pardon me. Yeah, so we start with yeah, so this weekend, Toy Story, one of the films that redefine 3D animation, the fifth installation in the story in the franchise, have been released, and it has already grossed $70 million, this weekend. But overall, almost $300 million. That is $297 million. Supergirl from DC, which was released just this past weekend, has made $38 million. And then Obsession has stayed put at number three and has made $9.8 million, totaling $233,903,085. Bear in mind, for Toy Story, it was released 2 weeks ago and yet has kept the number one position. So keep that in mind. Jackass Best and Last at number four, released just this past weekend. Just this past weekend has made 8.4 million. Disclosure Day, that is the Steven Spielberg's film about aliens living among us, was at number two last week and now has dropped to number five and made $8.1 million, making a total domestic of over $94 million. Backrooms for number four has dropped to number six. I think a film made by a YouTuber, I've forgotten his name, but this film indeed is making massive waves, and it's already grossed $184 million, with a recent domestic, a recent domestic result of $4.3 million. And number seven, dropping from number five, Scary Movie. That is the Wayans brothers Story made 3 million just this weekend, and a total domestic of 103 million and $523,756. By eight, you have Bleach Thousand Year Blood War, The Calamity made 3 million. And number nine, Masters of the Universe dropping from six to nine has made $2.2 million, total domestic of over 61 million. And then just thinking about just taking the top 10, the last but not the least is Star Wars, The Mandalorian, and Grogu made $1.6 million and a total domestic cum of $175 million and above. So this happens to be the total domestic box office results of the North American market. So now moving on to the international market, wherever you might have seen any of these films, these are the top 10 films. So Super Mario is still leading the chart in this year, the entire 2006. So not just domestic, but the entire 2006 with over $1 billion. Michael is almost close to making a billion with 977,456,401. Project Hail Mary has made 683,000, sorry, 683,355,577. The Devil Wears Prada, that's the sequel to The Devil Wears Prada 2. I'm sorry, the sequel to The Devil Wears Prada has made $678,043,803. Number five, you have Pegasus 3, making $656,459,523. Number six, we have the Toy Story 5, which has made 585,041,642. So Toy Story, which was just released 2 weeks ago, is already among the top 10 of the year. A very likely indication that by the time it's done with this theatrical run, it's likely going to place among the very best, maybe the top 25 or top 20 uh, best grossing films of all time. Obviously, it's going to be among the top five best animated films of all times in terms of box office results. Already, in terms of the critics review and the audience review is among the 90 percentile already, so it is quite interesting. Opus, another animated movie, is around 372 million dollars, so 372 $10,783. Number eight, Obsession, 370 million and above. Backrooms also 330 and upwards, $330 million and upwards. And Star Wars, The Mandalorian and Grogu made $325,253,370. So this indeed are the figures of the films that have performed over the weekend and also over the year of 2026. And so this brings me to an end of today's episode of the Film Mandate. Thanks so much for joining me, and definitely I'll be coming your way again with exciting stories from around the globe with regards to the things we love to talk about, and that is film. My name is Papa Otu, and this has been the Film Mandate. I'll see you soon.